Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Thursday. It's the 8th day of August, 2024, and there is so much that's happening right now with respect to last day's Bible prophecy. More and more stories are coming out that Hezbollah is rapidly moving towards some type of attack against Israel, while Iran may be having second thoughts. There's also a very disturbing story about Kamala Harris that she is open to discussing an arms embargo on Israel in exchange for Michigan's uncommitted votes. Another story emphasizes that her pick of a vice president, Tim Walz, was meant to keep the anti-Semitic part of the Democrat Party on board. And with all of this going on, we see there's been an uptick of Jewish visitors to the Temple Mount. Each of these stories has profound possibilities with respect to last days Bible prophecy, as we will explain. All right, let's go to headline number one. Here's the report. Hezbollah could strike Israel independent of Iran. Hezbollah looks increasingly like it might strike Israel independent of whatever Iran may or may not do, adding that Hezbollah is moving much faster in its planning that Iran is doing it. In other words, Iran has been slowing down, almost stopping. Hezbollah is going full on. Now, according to sources, Hezbollah is moving faster than Iran and is planning to attack Israel, and it's looking like it will strike in the coming days. Iran, in the meanwhile, appears to be working out how it plans to respond. Multiple officials have told CNN that one military official said that Iran has made some, but not all of the preparations that the U.S. would expect to see in advance for a major attack on Israel. Now, given Lebanon's proximity to Israel, it's right on its northern borders, direct neighbor to the north, Hezbollah could act with little or no notice. A second source familiar with the intelligence said, which is certainly not true of Iran. Iran needs to take some time and get ready before they can launch an attack. Now, they both vowed to avenge the elimination of Hamas's political chief, Ismail Haniyeh, in Tehran, as of course Iran has done that. And of course, Hezbollah, their senior commander, Fuad Shakur, was taken out in Beirut by Israelis. Two assassinations that were done almost simultaneously. One a Hezbollah leader, one Hamas leader, obviously. The Hamas leader, the problem for that for Iran was it happened on their soil, in their backyard. And that's why they are so embarrassed by this and feel like they must respond. But with Hezbollah, this was their second in command. So that's why they're pushing towards some type of response. Now, what's interesting, White House officials said the other day that Iran may be reconsidering its planned attack on Israel. This is according to Washington Post columnist David Ignatius. Ignatius wrote that Iran may be reconsidering a plan for a major retaliation for the elimination of Haniyeh, but the officials stress that Hezbollah is still a wild card. And we had that story yesterday. Recall that the newly installed president of Iran, was begging the leader, the supreme leader, not to attack the U.S. because he basically said, "Look, they could destroy us. They could destroy our country if they wish. If Iran attacks Israel because the United States assets in the area, simply because between the two of them they could take care of Iran's structure, basically its infrastructure, and Israel is ready to do something like that. So that's why they're really, I think it's smart on their part to rethink this because it wasn't an Iranian leader that was taken out. It was on Iranian soil, but still, is that worth, making your country vulnerable for, tremendous destruction? So we'll see. Again, given Lebanon's proximity to Israel, they could act with little or no notice, and we'll just see what happens. But it seems if there is an attack, it will come first and foremost from Lebanon because Iran doesn't seem to be moving really hurriedly to do something like that, even though they have a lot of, chatter, a lot of bellicose rhetoric from some of their generals, some of their leaders. But will something happen? Again, we don't know. So, as always, stay tuned. All right. Now, this next headline is very, very disturbing, but not surprising. Kamala Harris said yesterday she is open to discussing an arms embargo on Israel in exchange for Michigan's uncommitted voters. Now, Michigan is an important state to win for the presidency. She indicated Wednesday that she would be open to discussing an arms embargo against Israel in exchange for support of the so-called uncommitted movement of Muslim and Arab voters in Michigan. This comes from the New York Times. Before her rally in Detroit, Vice President Kamala Harris spoke briefly with the co-founders of the Uncommitted National Movement, which mobilized tens of thousands of voters in Michigan to withhold their votes from President Biden in the primary earlier this year over his support for Israel's war in Gaza. Abbas Aliyah and Leila Elabed said they were in the welcoming line for Harris and Governor Walz and communicated to Harris that they wanted to support her, but the voters wanted her to consider an arms embargo to immediately stop the carnage in the besieged enclave. Harris listened to the stories of the people in Michigan who have dozens of family members killed in Gaza. The leaders asked to meet with her about the embargo request, and she indicated she was open to it and introduced the two leaders to her staff. Now, this is extremely, extremely disturbing. As we have mentioned in other stories, Harris seems to forget that it was Hamas that attacked Israel, broke the peace treaty between them, and the only reason there are people dying in Gaza is because Israel had to retaliate for the 1,400 people that were slaughtered that day, the 250 people that were taken captive, and the overall, horrific event that took place on October 7th of last year. And they're not going to just sit on their hands and allow this to continue. They had to do something, and they're doing something. And unfortunately, Hamas is the one that's putting putting the Palestinian people in harm's way, the Gazans in harm's way. They put them in front of mosques, hospitals, you name it, kindergartens when they shoot at Israel. And the collateral damage sometimes does happen. And of course, the photographers are still there for Reuters and the AP to show the world how horrible Israel is killing these innocent civilians, where it's all Hamas doing this. And also, remember, Harris said, although she didn't agree with these people that protest on everything they say, she really loved their enthusiasm, the ones coming on the college campuses and saying death to Israel from the river to the sea, et cetera, et cetera. Even though the same time she said that, a story came out making it very clear that it was Iran behind these protests, and there were paid, insurgents there, paid people, agitators to go to these college campuses and bring the students out. So what it portends is a very anti-Semitic, administration she will have. Her true colors are coming out, and which brings us to our next story. Really, they came out in picking Tim Walz instead of a Jewish governor as her running mate. Harris has attempted to keep the anti-Israel and anti-Semitic wing of her party on board by declining to pick Governor Josh Shapiro as her running mate, choosing Governor Tim Walz, Democrat of Minnesota, instead. Just as an aside on Walz, we haven't talked about this yet. Everybody knows by now, or should, that he was the one picked. He's not very well known nationally, but he was very well known to us a few years ago when we were doing his channel to 24. We did a breaking news program 5 days a week, an hour a day. And when the George Floyd riots took place in Minnesota, Walz was a key figure in basically allowing that to happen. The Black Lives Matter burning down Minneapolis, keeping the National Guard away from them. And he came to the forefront many times during our stories there as this uber leftist loon that actually was encouraging this sort of stuff. This because he was talking about how oppressed these people have been, so it's natural they would stand up and riot, et cetera, et cetera. So he is the perfect candidate with her because as she is, as we've mentioned, of the 100 people in the United States Senate when she was there, she was the 100th most liberal of all the senators, worse than Crazy Bernie, who was number 99. So this is who she is, and picking Walz instead of Shapiro from Pennsylvania, who would be a little more of a moderate pick, who is Jewish. What this points out, the fact is, this is who she's appealing to, the leftist base of the party. But the press and everybody's doing their best to try and paint Walz as this Midwestern, nice, normal guy, and that and not talking at all about what she has said and done in the past, and just, trying to do the Joe Biden thing, hide in the basement during the whole campaign and not get to the facts of what she really believes. But anyway, she's attempted to keep the anti-Israel, anti-Semitic wing on board. Not only is Shapiro Jewish, he also has a history of past strident pro-Israel commentary, which belatedly tried to disavow. Walz, on the other hand, while he was initially supportive of Israel, has also backed anti-Israel and anti-Semitic Representative Ilhan Omar. In 2019, according to the Washington Free Beacon, Walz also attended a conference organized by the Radical Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, with the anti-Semitic founder of Students for Justice in Palestine. The Democratic vice president nominee Walz spoke at the event for CAIR, which he rubbed shoulders with an anti-Semitic scholar behind much of Hamas's propaganda on college campuses. in the wake of October 7th, according to photos of the event. Photos of the conference show Waltz posed with Hatim Bazian, an anti-Semitic scholar who has for years defended anti-Israel terrorist activity. He's the founder of Students for Justice in Palestine, the group that was behind many of the pro-Hamas and anti-Semitic rallies across college campuses in the wake of the October 7th attacks. The group's George Washington University chapter projected the slogan, "Glory to our martyrs," days after the attack. And again, his parent group is influential in financing these types of organizations. Federal prosecutors have labeled CARE as an unindicted co-conspirator of Hamas in a 2008 terrorism financial case. In 2017, getting this, Bazian apologized for posting an anti-Semitic meme of a Jewish man with the caption, "Mom, look, I is chosen. I can now kill, rape, smuggle organs, and steal the land of Palestinians. Yay." And it was at a hashtag Ashkenazi Nazi, and he had to apologize for that because he was forced to. Now, as Breitbart News noted in 2008, CARE was named as an unindicted co-conspirator in the terror financing of the Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development. That was a huge story at the time. The UAE, the United Arab Emirates, actually labeled CARE a terrorist organization in 2014. Now, get this, a decision that the Obama administration opposed. So we've got the usual gang of suspects here. Now, while some anti-Israel members of the party pronounced themselves satisfied with the Waltz pick, that was evidently not good enough for some activists who believe Harris and Waltz are still insufficiently anti-Israel for their liking. So it's going to be interesting to see if her campaign makes any public statements on the issue. Many Muslims, especially in Michigan, have publicly opposed Biden in his stance for the war on Gaza. Will Harris try to distance herself from Biden to win these votes? It seems she's open to this possibility. And so, like we said, depending on what happens in November, there are two futures for the United States. And if this pair gets in, Harris and Waltz, it's the end. Let's face it. It's just that simple. America is going that way right now, and this will basically put the nail in the coffin why we're not a player in last days Bible prophecy. Any superpower status we had would be destroyed by these two. And that's what may happen. We don't know, but we'll again follow this every day, this story. Now, with all this going on, we've got a very important story with respect to last days Bible prophecy. Another one that needs to be cited. Headline number 4. This is from Israel Hayom. Prayers and Politics, the growing Jewish presence on the Temple Mount. In a delicate balance of religious devotion and political sensitivity, Jewish pilgrims are increasingly frequenting the Temple Mount in Jerusalem's Old City. Despite long-standing restrictions and tensions surrounding the site, sacred to both Jews and Muslims, visitors report a notable uptick in Jewish presence with daily prayer groups and study sessions occurring under close police supervision. After ascending the wooden bridge, Jewish visitors and tourists are greeted by an impressive model of the temple with the biblical verse, "And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them." Isn't that interesting? Because we know from last days Bible prophecy, there will be a third temple built in the city of Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. It will be built in unbelief of Jesus. And at that site, certain events will take place that will be center stage in last days Bible prophecy. From Daniel 9:27, we know that sacrifices will begin in this newly rebuilt temple, and they will be stopped in the midst of a final 7-year peace agreement, an agreement, most likely a peace agreement between the final Antichrist and the Jewish people. And at that time, he will declare war on the Jewish people. He will, put an image of himself. This is what this cohort, the false prophet, in the Holy of Holies in the temple demanded to be worshiped. And it basically declare open season on the Jewish people the last 3.5 years, which Jesus called the Great Tribulation of the final 7-year period. That's Matthew 24:21, where he said that. And so that's why the Temple Mount, whenever it's in the headlines, we always talk about this story. We've written an entire book on the subject called The Jews, Jerusalem, and the Coming Temple. And also it's headlined, it's sign number 8 of our 25 signs. Preparations are being made to build a third temple. Now, go to our website, Educating Our World. All of this is free. The free download of 25 signs when near the end, and the book, The Jews, Jerusalem, and the Coming Temple, where we explain this in great detail, what the scripture says about a future temple that will be built, and preparations have been made and are being made right now to that end. So as we see all these things take place right now, we are reminded that God's word has told us ahead of time what's going to take place. We see it, and it gives us confidence that there is a God in heaven. He does exist. He's told us the future. And more than this, he's in control of the events of the future. And so we can be comforted in that, even though the events coming are not going to be very pretty. All right, I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again with another edition of Breaking News today, depending on what happens with Israel and Hezbollah. We may come sooner rather than later. But anyway, we'll be back with you. But until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.